How to tell when you are not being authentic is not about catching yourself in some big lie. It's about noticing the everyday ways you disconnect from yourself without realizing it. A lot of people genuinely believe they're being very authentic, and that was me, but they wonder why their relationships feel so superficial or so unsatisfying. In this video, I want to help you gently question where you might be playing a role, where you are not being you. And that role is when you mistake self-protection for authenticity. Self-protection is when you do things to look good or to get approval or to protect your image or reputation. And authenticity is your genuine intention being expressed with your own style. I want to show you how you may unconsciously be blaming others for the disconnection that you feel. But before we move on to talk about the signs of being inauthentic, I tell you that there is a solution for this. And it's a practice that I will share with you in the description of this video. But you want to stay until the end to learn why this practice will work for you if you identify with any of the signs that I am going to share or reveal here. Let's begin. One of the clearest signs that you are being inauthentic is when you feel convinced that you are authentic. You may think, I am just being myself, or I prefer to be honest. And you're not even checking how you're being. That's usually not authenticity. That is autopilot. Authenticity requires self-awareness. And without that self-awareness, we just act from old behaviors or old strategies where we put up an emotional protection that we picked up years ago. And here's how this works. Many people confuse authenticity with being reactive, upfront, or emotionally distant. And this may sound like, I say what I think, or I am very private. And those might feel real, but often they're just old protection patterns that are running the show. And this is how we fix this. It's not about judging yourself. It's about getting curious about how you do things. Authenticity starts the moment you're willing to ask, is this who I am? Or is this who I learned to be to stay safe? Let's keep going. Another sign you're being inauthentic is when everyone else seems to be the problem in your relationships. How does that happen? If you feel misunderstood, unseen, or emotionally disconnected from someone, and the story is always about the other person or the other people being emotionally superficial or distant, it's worth pausing there. Not to blame yourself, but to look inward. And here's how that works. Often we believe that we are open or we are real while we're controlling how much we let others see from us. We may share opinions instead of feelings. We may share stories instead of our own vulnerability, or we show strength instead of our truth. Deep connection does not come from being correct or being impressive. It comes from being available. And availability begins with noticing what you are withholding, even from your own self. Another sign that tells you that you are being inauthentic is if you are always good or I'm handling it. Because when you constantly feel emotionally self-sufficient, you may look mature or strong or independent, but it can also be an armor. And this emotional armor keeps you very functional, but it also keeps you distant. So many of us, especially Gen X, people like me, we're taught to push through, to cope with things, and not to make things a big deal. But coping is very far from connecting. And also being low maintenance, which is my biggest one, isn't the same as being authentic. How can we fix this? We don't have to fall apart to be real, but we have to allow ourselves to name what is happening inside of us, even silently. That is a really powerful step back that we can take to see ourselves better. Remember that I had that antidote practice for this powerful step back that you can take to learn to see yourself more clearly. So remember to grab it in the description below after you finish watching this. Another big one that tells you of being inauthentic is when you feel very productive, very successful, but you feel unfulfilled. And this happens when you think you're doing the right things or when you are saying the right words. And even if you think you look impressive to others, but you are still disconnected from the experience, from your inner experience. Achievement does not require authenticity. What it requires is your presence. So think of this. Many high functioning people are deeply disconnected, not because they're bad, but because they've never been taught how to turn inward without feeling bad or without judging themselves. Self-awareness is not being efficient. It's not an efficient or a quick process, and it does not give you any recognition from others. But this is what it does. It gives you something much better, clarity. And clarity is what allows real intimacy with yourself and with others. If you still believe this is just who I am, pause right there. That phrase often signals a fixed way of being, built from all your past experiences, not from your awareness of this very moment. Authenticity isn't fixed. It evolves as you do, and it constantly changes. So you need to keep checking in. That means if you stop questioning yourself, you stop growing. And when we stop growing, our relationships stagnate. And not because others have failed us, but because we have abandoned ourselves. Let's wrap this up. You don't need to reinvent yourself. You just need to stay in relationship with yourself. That's authenticity. View this video again to remember how to stay in relationship with yourself every day, checking in so you don't feel abandoned. Authenticity isn't about being raw all the time or having no filters. It's about being conscious of the filters you are using. If this video moved something in you, let that be enough for today. Awareness always comes before change, and that's where real connections begin. Grab your free resource in the description below to get the clarity you need when you stay connected with yourself. And I'll see you in my next video.